had always known that space was dangerous. She had trained for 3 years in the human military, learned how to fix broken engines, repair damaged systems, and keep people alive in impossible situations. But nothing prepared her for the moment when the alarm started screaming across the bridge of the Discovery. Captain shouted orders, his voice cutting through the noise. The ship shook violently as energy weapons hit the hull. Red lights flashed everywhere. Through the window saw 3 massive black ships closing in on them. They had no markings, but she knew what they were. Vex Empire, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Ran toward the engine room. This was her job. She was the ship's chief engineer, which meant she had to keep the engines running no matter what happened outside. But as she moved through the corridors, she felt the ship lurch again. This time, it did not recover. The lights went dark for 3 seconds. When they came back on, they were a dying red color. The communication system crackled. A voice speaking perfect English came through, cold and emotionless. "Human vessel Discovery, you are in violation of Vex Empire space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Captain responded from the bridge. "This is Captain. We are on a peaceful exploration mission. We mean no harm." The response came quickly. "Humans are not welcome in this sector. You have 10 seconds to power down all weapons and prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in immediate termination of your vessel and all life aboard." Reached the engine room and immediately began checking the status displays. The main reactor was still operational, but the secondary systems were failing. One of her crew members, David, was already there, trying to reroute power to the shield generators. "How bad is it?" asked. "Really bad," David said without looking away from his console. "The starboard side is compromised. They hit us with some kind of energy weapon that burned right through our shielding. I am trying to reroute power, but I do not have enough capacity." Moved to the main panel and started working. Her fingers flew across the controls, shutting down non-essential systems. Life support stayed active. Navigation stayed active, but everything else went dark. Lights dimmed throughout the ship. It felt like watching the Discovery die slowly. The bridge sent an emergency message. "Engine room, we are taking more hits. Whatever you can do, do it now." Another explosion rocked the ship. This one was close to the engine room. Alarms started screaming. The lights flickered and went out completely. Only the emergency lighting remained, casting everything in a sickly orange glow. "The reactor is destabilizing," David said, panic in his voice now. "If we do not shut it down manually, it will blow." Knew what that meant. If the reactor blew, everyone on the ship would die. She made a decision in less than a second. "We are shutting it down now." She moved to the reactor chamber. The door was hot to the touch, but she ignored the pain and entered the small room where the reactor core sat, humming dangerously. She reached up and hit the emergency shutdown sequence. Red sparks flew from the control panel. The reactor screamed as it powered down. For a moment, thought it would explode anyway. But then, slowly, the humming stopped. The light from the reactor faded to nothing. The ship went completely dark except for emergency lights. Ran back to David. "Get to the evacuation pods, now. Tell everyone to abandon ship." "What about you?" David asked. "I am right behind you," said. She was not. She was already moving back through the ship, heading toward the main corridor where the escape pods were located. Around her, crew members were running, shouting, trying to get to safety. She saw Doctor, the medical officer, struggling to help an injured crew member who could barely walk. Without thinking, ran to them. She took the injured man's other arm and helped move him toward the pods. Behind them, she could hear sounds of the Vex Empire soldiers boarding the ship. Heavy footsteps, the crackle of weapons being charged. They reached the pod bay just as the first group of soldiers turned the corner, and got the injured man into a pod and hit the launch sequence. The pod shot away from the ship just as energy weapons fire tore through the bay. "Turn 2, get to another pod, go." Ran but did not follow. Instead, she moved deeper into the ship. She knew the layout better than anyone. She knew the maintenance tunnels, the hidden corridors, the places where crew members might have been trapped. She found 3 more people huddled in a storage room, terrified and not knowing where to go. She guided them to a functioning pod bay on the other side of the ship. She was on her way to escape herself when a Vex soldier grabbed her from behind. The soldier was tall, more than 2 meters, with scaled green skin and 4 arms. It was impossibly strong. Tried to fight, but the soldier simply held her while 2 more soldiers approached with some kind of metallic restraint device. She heard Captain shouting orders on the emergency frequency. "Get to the pods. Anyone still aboard, get to the pods now." The restraints clicked around wrists. She looked up at the Vex soldier holding her. Its face was completely emotionless, just cold reptilian eyes staring down at her. "What is your designation?" It asked in that same cold voice that had come through the communication system. Did not answer. She tried to break free, but it was pointless. The Vex soldier was too strong, and there were too many of them. "I am taking you alive," the soldier said. "The Empire wants to study human soldiers. They will want to understand what makes your species so bold and so stupid." Was dragged away from the escape pods, away from the Discovery, away from any chance of escape. As she was pulled into the Vex shuttle, she saw the Discovery one last time. The ship she had served on for 6 months, the ship with her friends, was being pulled apart by tractor beams. It was being torn to pieces. Everything went black as she was forced into the cargo hold of the Vex shuttle. She could hear machinery around her, the sound of other people crying, the heavy footsteps of the alien soldiers. She tried to keep her mind calm, tried to think about what came next, tried to remember her training. But the only thing she could think about was the fact that she was now a prisoner of the Vex Empire. And if the stories were true, nobody had ever escaped from a Vex prison facility. Nobody had ever even tried. The Vex prison facility orbited above a massive dark planet that seemed to swallow light itself. From the shuttle window could see the structure. It was a perfect sphere, kilometers in diameter, covered with sharp spines and glowing lights. It looked like something designed to crush hope. The Vex soldiers pushed her through metal corridors. Other prisoners from different species were being escorted in different directions. Saw tall creatures, beings made of crystalline material that reflected light, creatures that looked almost liquid in their form. They all looked defeated. They all looked like they had already given up. She was taken to a holding cell, one of hundreds stacked inside the facility. The space was small, barely enough to lie down in. There was no window, no outside light, nothing except a metal bunk and a waste disposal hole in the corner. A force field at the front of the cell prevented escape. For the first time since her capture, felt fear take hold of her completely. She sat on the bunk and tried to think about what came next. The Vex soldier had said they wanted to study human soldiers. That meant interrogation. That meant pain. That meant death. Hours passed, maybe longer. There was no way to tell time in this place. The light never changed. No day or night existed here. Then a guard appeared outside the cell. The guard was smaller than the one who had captured her, a Vex with only 2 of its 4 arms visible. It punched a code into a panel, and the force field dropped. "Come," the guard said, "you have assignment." Was led through more corridors to a massive chamber. Inside, hundreds of alien prisoners were working. Some were sorting materials, some were assembling complex machinery, some were doing heavy labor that looked designed to break their bodies. An older alien approached her. It was a creature with blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a circle on its head. Its name, would later learn, was Cora. "You are human," Cora said. It was not a question. "I have studied human biology from the Vex archives. Your species is fragile, weak. Why are you here?" "They captured our ship," said. "I did not surrender." Cora made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That explains it. The Vex do not respect surrender. They only respect resistance. But resistance means nothing here. You will work until you cannot work. Then you will be executed. The Vex use executions to show strength to the galaxy." "How long do I have?" asked. 7 days, Cora said. "That is what they told us. They always tell prisoners how long they have. It is part of their method. They want prisoners to think about death approaching. They believe it breaks the spirit." Looked around the work chamber. Every prisoner seemed broken. Their movements were slow. Their eyes were empty. They had already surrendered to what was coming. "My name is," she said. "What is your story?" Cora explained that it had been a structural engineer on a planet that the Vex had conquered 10 years ago. The Vex took everything the planet had, enslaved the population, and eventually destroyed the world itself when it no longer had resources to offer. Cora was the only survivor brought to this prison, kept alive, because the Vex occasionally wanted to study the last member of a conquered species. "I have seen the layout of this facility," Cora said carefully. "I have seen where the guard stations are. I have seen the power systems. The Vex believe we are too broken to try escape. They believe prisoners in their facility have no hope, but I have not surrendered, not completely, not yet." Understood what Cora was saying without needing more explanation. There was a possibility here. Small, almost impossible, but it existed. The guards change shifts every 6 hours, Cora continued, speaking as they worked sorting pieces of metal. During the shift change, there is a 14-minute window where certain sections of the facility have reduced surveillance. That is when it would be possible to access the maintenance tunnels that run beneath the work chamber. What about security locks? Asked. I do not have the codes, Cora said, but I know someone who might. There is a prisoner named Luna. She is telepathic. Her species was enslaved 300 years ago, and nearly all of her kind have been destroyed. The Vex keep her in isolation because her abilities are dangerous. She is held in the psychological ward on the level above this one. Began to understand the shape of what they could attempt. It was insane. The odds were impossible, but it was something other than accepting death. I want to help, said another voice, turned to see a massive creature standing behind her. It looked like a warrior with thick armor-like skin and multiple scars covering its body. Its name was Zax, and it had been a soldier in its own civilization before the Vex conquered his world. Why? Asked. If we fail, the punishment will be worse than execution. Exactly, Zax said. So we do not fail, we escape, or we die fighting. Either is better than this. Over the next several days, Cora and Zax began to work carefully. They watched the guards. They learned the patterns. They collected materials that might be useful, used her engineering knowledge to understand the facility's systems better. She noticed maintenance panels, power conduits, water pipes, and structural elements that could be useful. They managed to make contact with Luna through a complex system of prison work assignments. The telepathic alien confirmed that she knew the security codes. She could not access them herself while in isolation, but she could share them through a brief moment of mental contact in the work chamber. The group grew by 2 more. Another alien named Vex, no relation to the Empire despite sharing a name, who had survival skills from living on a harsh planet, and a small crystalline being called Shimmer who could move through tight spaces that others could not. 5 days after his arrival at the prison, they had a plan. It was rough. It had many points where it could fail, but it was better than anything else they had. Gathered them together in a shadowed corner of the work chamber during a shift change. When we do this, she said, we will need to be perfect, no mistakes. The Vex will not show us mercy. They will not stop hunting us. But humans have survived in places where nothing should survive. My species has done impossible things. We can do this. We can escape. The prisoners around her looked different now. They looked like they had something to live for. They looked like hope had returned, even if just a little bit. Did not tell them what she was thinking. She did not tell them that she was terrified. She did not tell T the maintenance tunnel entrance was hidden behind a panel in the lower work chamber. During the shift change, when guards were concentrated at other checkpoints, Cora used a piece of metal that had shaped to pry open the panel. The hole was barely large enough for a person to fit through. Went first, dropping down into darkness. The air was cold and smelled like machine oil and something else, something that made her stomach turn. She activated the small light she had made from salvaged materials. The beam was weak, but enough to see the tunnel stretching before her. Cora came down next, then Zax, then Vex, then Shimmer. Luna remained behind, still in isolation, waiting for contact through the telepathic link that would tell them the security codes they needed. The tunnel was flooded up to their waists with dark water. Did not want to think about what was in it. The temperature was dropping as they moved deeper into the facility. The tunnel walls were corroded and covered with growth that looked almost alive. Stay close, said, her voice echoed in the confined space. Do not touch the walls, there may be electrical systems running through them. They moved slowly, carefully. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, heard something that made her blood cold. Water movement. Not just from their movement through it, but something else, something big. Stop, she whispered. They froze in the tunnel. The sound grew louder. Something large was moving toward them through the water. Could see ripples spreading across the dark surface. Zax moved in front of her. The warrior's hand went to a weapon he had fashioned from prison materials. It was crude, but it might do damage to something. A creature breached the water. It was not alien. It was mechanical. A defense drone, probably designed to patrol the maintenance systems and eliminate any unauthorized movement. It had multiple sensors and what looked like a plasma cannon mounted on its chassis. The drone's sensors turned toward the group. There was a moment where nothing happened, then it fired. The blast hit the water next to them, boiling a section of it instantly. Was already moving. She grabbed Zax and Cora and pulled them toward a side tunnel that she had noticed on her mental map of the facility. The drone fired again, missing as they dove into the narrower passage. The new tunnel it was barely large enough for a single person to move through. Shimmer went first, its crystalline body somehow squeezing into spaces that seemed impossible. The others followed, struggling. Behind them, they could hear the drone trying to follow, metal scraping against the tunnel walls. But it was too large. It got stuck, its servos grinding in frustration. They crawled through the tunnel, their hands bleeding from sharp metal edges, their clothing torn. Did not notice. She was thinking about the systems, about the layout, about where this tunnel would lead. It opened into a larger chamber. This one was filled with machinery, complex systems with tubes and valves and controls that did not understand. But she could understand the principle. This was part of the facility's power distribution system. She could follow it toward the reactor. As they moved into the chamber, a sound stopped them. A voice speaking in heavily accented English. "I am Officer Dex of the Vex Empire Guard. You are committing a crime against the Empire. Drop your weapons. Return to your cells." A Vex soldier stood before them. It had only 2 of its 4 arms visible, and one of them held a weapon pointed directly at its head. She realized in that moment that they were finished. The escape was over. Dex would kill them or bring them back to be executed in front of everyone. The hope she had brought to the other prisoners would die here in this machine chamber. Stepped forward, slowly, her hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "Do not move," Dex said. The weapon barrel did not waver. "My name is," she said, still speaking slowly. "You are Dex. You work here. I do not think you want to kill us." "You do not know anything about what I want," Dex said. His voice was cold but wavering slightly. "I know that you are speaking to me in English. I know that you could have simply killed us from where you were standing, but instead you called out and told us to surrender. That is not what someone does when they want to kill. That is what someone does when they want to give a prisoner a chance." Dex's weapon lowered slightly. "The Empire is strong. Escape is impossible. You will be caught. You will be executed. All I do by letting you go is delay the inevitable." "Maybe," said. "Or maybe we have a chance that no one has ever had before. Maybe because I am human, because my species survived on a world that tried to kill us every day, maybe we have something that the Vex never expected to encounter in a prison. Maybe we have hope." Dex was quiet for a long moment. "If I let you go, I will be executed also. The Empire does not tolerate failure." "Then come with us," said. She did not know if it was possible. She did not know if Dex would even survive what was coming. But she knew that in that moment, she was offering something real. Dex lowered his weapon. "The security codes you need are 77 Alpha 29. The central hub is 2 chambers ahead. The reactor core access is behind a door marked with a red symbol. You have maybe 30 minutes before the alarm triggers my absence from my post, and guards are sent." "Thank you," said. "Do not thank me yet," Dex said. "I will create a distraction in the main corridor. That will buy you more time, but I will likely die for doing this." "You do not have to," said. "Yes, I do," Dex replied. "I have been serving the Empire for 7 years. I have seen things I should not have seen. Things that the Vex told me were necessary and strong. But your species, humans, you came to rescue someone you have never met. I have learned from watching broadcasts of other species. No one does that. No one wastes resources on strangers, but humans do. You do. Your species is flawed and fragile, but you are correct about one thing. You have something we do not. You have hope." Dex moved past them into the corridor. Moments later, they heard explosions echoing through the facility. And her group ran toward the reactor core. The chamber was more heavily guarded than they expected, but with Dex's distraction consuming the guards' attention, they were able to approach the central control terminal. Sat down in front of it. Her fingers flew across the controls. She input the codes. Emergency shutdown sequences began to activate. The reactor started to scream as it powered down. Behind them, she could hear guards shouting, weapons firing, the sound of the facility beginning to tear itself apart. "Now," said, "we run." She did not look back to see if Dex survived. She would never know. But she would never forget that in the heart of an oppressive empire, one being had chosen to help because it realized there was something better than strength. There was choice. There was conscience. The alarm screamed across the entire facility. Lights flashed red and white. The power systems failed in waves, sections of the prison going dark, then struggling back to life on emergency power. Emergency bulkheads were slamming shut throughout the structure, sealing corridors and cutting off escape routes. Broadcast a message across the internal communication system. She had accessed it using codes that Luna had provided through their telepathic connection. Her voice reached every prisoner in the facility, in every language, in every form that could be understood. This is human prisoner. The facility is beginning to fail. The power core is shutting down. This is your moment. Move now toward the docking bays. Do not wait. Do not panic. We are getting out of here. The prisoners responded. Thousands of them from hundreds of different species all began moving at once. Some ran, some flew, some floated. They moved through corridors in waves, pushing toward the docking bays where the escape ships were stored. The guards tried to stop them, but there were not enough guards for so many prisoners. Firefights erupted in the main corridors. Weapons fire lit up hallways. Some prisoners died. Some guards died, but the wave kept moving forward. And her team reached the docking bay first. The area was massive, filled with small transport ships designed for moving prisoners between facilities. Zax immediately began working on unlocking the nearest ship, while Cora started a second one. "How many people can we fit?" asked. "Maybe 200 per ship," Cora said, "but there are thousands coming." Made a decision, they would launch every ship. They would fill them as fast as possible and send them out. Some would escape, some would not, but the attempt had to be made. The first wave of prisoners reached the bay, directed them toward the ships. Children and the young went first. The injured went second, then everyone else. She moved between the crowds, helping, organizing, pushing people toward survival. A group of Vex guards appeared at the entrance to the docking bay. They opened fire immediately. Several prisoners went down. Zax responded with weapons of his own, giving cover fire while continued moving people to the ships. "How much time?" she shouted at Cora. 3 minutes for the next launch," Cora called back. "The bay pressure seals are failing. We need to launch or everyone dies when the bay decompresses. Grab the nearest prisoners and force them into the ship. Go, launch now." The ship's engines activated. It lifted off the bay floor and accelerated toward the launch tubes. As it left, the bay pressure alarms started screaming even louder. A voice came through the communication system. It was deep and heavy with authority. "This is Commander Vex. I am sealing all exits. No prisoner will leave this facility alive." The exits began to close. Could see heavy metal doors descending from the ceiling. Hundreds of prisoners were still in the bay, and thousands more were coming through the corridors. They would never all fit into the remaining ships before the bay became a sealed tomb. Ran to Cora. "Can you open those doors?" "Not without the power systems," Cora said. "The emergency power is not enough." Looked at the reactor. It was still partially active despite the emergency shutdown. If she could reroute some of its power to the bay doors, she could keep them open long enough for more prisoners to escape. She ran back into the corridor toward the reactor chamber. Behind her, she could hear Zax shouting her name, but she ignored it. There was no time to explain. There was no time to hesitate. The reactor chamber was in chaos. The cooling systems had failed, and the core was burning hot. Radiation alarms were going off. Could feel the heat on her skin as she approached the control panel. She input the commands, rerouting power directly from the reactor to the docking bay doors. The reactor temperature spiked. The system began to fail more rapidly, but the bay doors stopped closing. They froze halfway down, leaving enough space for people to pass underneath. Ran back to the docking bay just as a massive figure appeared in the entrance. It was Commander Vex, the elite guard who had captured her on the Discovery. His skin was covered with scars and old wounds. He was carrying a weapon that looked heavy enough to tear through the bay walls. "I have been hunting you since your capture," Commander Vex said. "I have tracked your movements, watched your failures, waited for the moment when I could end your life personally. This is that moment." Prisoners around them began to back away. They had seen what this commander could do. They knew they could not help. Stepped forward. "I want to fight you, but I do not have time. There are thousands of people still trying to escape. If I kill you now, that is good. If you kill me, that is acceptable. But if we waste time, everyone behind us dies." Commander Vex raised his weapon. "You should have stayed broken, little human. You should have given up like the others." He fired. The blast hit the ground where it had been standing a second before. She was already running, moving toward the reactor chamber. The commander followed, too fast, too strong. She was trapped in a part of the facility that was collapsing. Pulled him into the reactor chamber. The core was burning. The ceiling was beginning to crack under the stress. There was a coolant pipe running along the wall, still pressurized despite the system failures. She grabbed it and pulled it free, covering the commander in superheated liquid. He screamed and fell, waited, just one moment, just long enough to see if he would live or die. The commander moved. He was badly burned, but he was conscious. He reached for a control panel and pulled a remote alarm. An automated escape pod extended from a hidden panel in the wall designed for high-ranking officers. He crawled toward it. Did not stop him. She let him go. She let him leave because in that moment she understood something that the Vex Empire would never understand. Strength was not about killing everyone who opposed you. Strength was about making choices, about choosing mercy when you had the power to do otherwise. She ran back to the docking bay just as the last ships were preparing to launch. The reactor behind her was beginning to fail completely. The entire facility was descending into chaos. All 5 remaining ships lifted off and accelerated toward the launch tubes. As they cleared the facility, the reactor exploded. The blast tore through the structure, ripping it apart in a cascade of destruction. The prison that had held them, the structure that had been designed to crush hope, was destroyed. The ships flew into empty space. Ahead of them, the dark planet that had orbited below the facility continued on its endless path through the darkness. Inside one of the ships, watched as millions of kilometers of space opened up between them and the exploding facility. She felt Cora's hand on her shoulder. She heard Zax and the others saying that they had made it, that they had escaped, that they had done the impossible. But she knew that the real test was just beginning. They had escaped the prison. They had survived the escape. But they were now 5 small ships floating in hostile territory, far from any safe harbor, pursued by the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The communication system crackled. A message came through not from the Vex Empire, but from somewhere else. A human frequency, a human ship. Unknown vessels, this is captain of the human military. We have been tracking the Vex facility. We saw the explosion. Are there survivors? Could not believe what she was hearing. Captain, her captain, the one who was supposed to be dead. This is, she said into the communication system. Yes, there are survivors, thousands of them. We, the human fleet, appeared on the scanners like a beacon in the darkness. 12 ships, heavily armed, moving through space with purpose. At the head of the formation was the New Hope captain's command vessel. It was not as large as a Vex Empire warship, but too, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. All vessels, reduce speed and stand by for docking, Captain transmitted. We are receiving your people aboard. We will take whoever wants to come with us toward human space. The first group of alien prisoners boarded the New Hope, watched from the bridge of the command ship as representatives from 50 different species walked through the docking tubes. They had been captive. They had been broken. Now they were refugees looking for somewhere to belong. Cora stood next to, looking at the human ship with wonder. The alien engineer had never been aboard a human vessel before. The design was different from what the Vex used. It was less about domination and more about efficiency. Everything had a purpose, but nothing was designed to intimidate or crush. Your captain came for you, Cora said. He did not have to. His species has no obligation to us. No, agreed. He came because it was the right thing to do. That is what humans do. On the scanners, they could see the Vex Empire response. 3 warships had been dispatched from the nearest military station. They were closing fast. Captain appeared on the communication screen. He looked older than remembered. Battle, but his eyes were clear and determined. We need to move. The Vex are closing. I am launching a small strike force to buy us time. You need to get those ships moving toward our position. We are going to make a jump to hyperspace in 8 minutes. Anyone still moving toward us when we jump is making the journey with us. The remaining prisoners understood. They ran toward the human fleet. The ships under command accelerated. The refugees moved as quickly as they could. The Vex warships opened fire. The first blast struck one of the prisoner transport ships. The vessel rocked from the impact. Alarms began to scream. It was still moving, but it was damaged and losing speed. Made a decision. She took control of one of the prison ships and turned it toward the damaged vessel. She used her smaller, more agile craft to move alongside the crippled ship and used magnetic docking systems to pull it along. Zax watched from the bridge of his own ship. The warrior understood what was doing. She was putting herself in greater danger to save others. It was not the most logical choice, but it was the most human choice, the one that made heroes. The human fleet's strike force engaged the Vex warships. It was not a fair fight. The Vex ships were larger, more powerful, better armed, but the human ships were faster, more maneuverable. They had something else too, experienced pilots and crews that knew how to survive. One of the Vex warships took a direct hit to its propulsion system. It slowed, falling out of formation, but the other two continued to press the attack. Ship was now pulling the damaged transport toward the New Hope. Behind her, she could see the distance closing between her ship and the Vex weaponry. It was getting close. Too close. In seconds, they would be in the line of fire. A human fighter pilot named Sarah cut across the space between ship and the incoming Vex fire. Her fighter took the hit that was meant for the transport. The ship exploded in a ball of flame. "Go," Sarah's voice came through the communication system one last time. "Get them out of here. That is an order." Felt her heart break, but there was no time to grieve. She pushed the throttle forward. The transport ship she was dragging began to move faster. The distance to the New Hope decreased rapidly. 50 kilometers, 40, 30. "All ships prepare for jump to hyperspace," Captain announced. 5 minutes to jump point. All remaining ships have 4 minutes to dock. The damaged transport was still not inside the New Hope's docking bay. They were cutting it too close. Could see the Vex warships turning for another attack run. The human fleet's remaining combat ships were moving to intercept, but they would not reach in time. Overrode all safety protocols and increased the tractor beam intensity to maximum. The transport ship groaned under the stress, but it accelerated. The hull began to glow from the friction of acceleration through space. 2 minutes to jump point. The transport ship reached the docking bay. It was moving too fast. It was going to crash into the back of the bay. An emergency containment field activated, stopping the transport dead. The refugee prisoners aboard were thrown forward but alive. The ship was damaged but intact. "All prisoners are aboard," Captain said. "Initiating hyperspace jump in 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10. The Vex warships fired again. A blast tore through the New Hope's hull. Alarms went off, but it did not matter anymore. The space around the human fleet began to distort. Reality bent. Stars twisted and reformed. And then, in a flash of light, the entire fleet vanished from normal space. In the darkness, the Vex warships found only empty space. The prisoners had escaped. Inside, the New Hope collapsed to the deck. She had done it. Against impossible odds, against a military force designed to crush hope, she had freed thousands of beings, and her own people had come to help her do it. Cora helped her to her feet. The alien engineer was smiling in a way that the human engineer would never have thought possible. "You saved us," Cora said. "You, a fragile human girl, saved thousands. The Vex told us that humans were weak, that you could not survive, that you had no place among the stars. They were wrong about all of it." Captain entered the bridge. He saluted, and she saluted back. "Welcome back," he said. "Welcome back to what?" asked. "We are in hyperspace. We do not know if the Vex will follow. We do not know if we will make it to human space. And even if we do, we are bringing thousands of alien refugees with us. Our people may not welcome them." "No," Captain said. "They will not at first, but that is how change happens. It happens when someone does something that other people did not think was possible. It happens when someone risks everything for someone else. The galaxy will learn from what you did here. The Vex Empire will understand that humanity is not what they thought. We are not the weak ones. We are the ones who keep coming back. We are the ones who help. We are the ones who survive." Looked at the assembled crew and the thousands of refugees that were now part of the New Hope's complement. She thought about Sarah, the fighter pilot who had sacrificed herself. She thought about Officer Dex, who had chosen conscience over loyalty. She thought about all the beings who had taken a chance on hope, because a human girl had shown them it was possible. The hyperspace journey took 2 weeks. During that time, worked to help integrate the refugees into the human fleet's infrastructure. Cora became her chief advisor on alien engineering and design. Zax organized the security forces to include warriors from multiple species working together. Luna continued to use her telepathic abilities to help with communication and healing. When the fleet finally emerged from hyperspace within sight of Earth, The entire galaxy took notice. A human military vessel approaching the home world with thousands of alien refugees was not something anyone had predicted. The government debated. Some wanted to refuse the refugees' entry, some wanted to send the aliens away. But the story had already spread. The story of a human girl who had escaped a Vex prison, who had led thousands to freedom, who had brought together different species in a common cause. By the time the New Hope docked at the primary station orbiting Earth, the crowds had gathered. Humans came to see the refugees. The refugees came to see the world that had produced a being like. Stood on the observation deck with Cora, Zax, and Luna. She did not feel like a hero. She felt like someone who had simply done what needed to be done. But around her, she could see the beginning of something new. Different species working together. Different worlds finding common ground. The Vex Empire had believed that strength came from power and dominance. They had believed that conquest and control made them supreme. But they had not understood the strength that came from hope. The strength that came from one being reaching out to another and saying, "We can do this together." Looked at her alien friends, and she smiled. "What are you thinking?" Cora asked. "I am thinking that the Vex made a mistake," said. "They should have broken us, they should have killed us, but they did not. And now the galaxy knows that humanity has something that no weapon can destroy. We have the ability to inspire hope. We have the ability to change the future, and nothing can stand against that." As the ships docked and the refugees began to disembark, the future was written not in weapons or conquest, but in connection. The girl from Earth who had been captured as a prisoner had become a symbol that even in the darkest places, even against the greatest odds, hope could survive. And survival was only the beginning. There was a pause, then Captain's voice came back and could hear the smile in it. "Help is on the way," he said. "Hold position, do not worry. Humanity keeps its promises to its own." That she believed they would probably fail. What she did was look each of them in the eyes and nod. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start." Until now,